Lake Garda is the largest lake in Italy, 52 kilometers long, up to 17 kilometers wide, 342 meters deep, and sitting right at the foot of the Alps in the north of the country. People have been drawn here for a very long time. Dante wrote about Garda, Goethe visited it, Napoleon crossed the lake. All of them spent time here. In more recent decades, the lake has become a favorite destination for a different kind of visitor. Tom Cruise, the Beckhams, Bradley Cooper, all have been spotted here over the years. We picked 5 towns around Lake Garda, visited each one and ranked them. By the end of this video you'll know which places are truly worth visiting and which ones you can safely skip. Limone sul Garda sits on the Lombardy side of Lake Garda, right between steep cliffs and the water. There is almost no space, so the whole town feels compact and a bit squeezed in. For a long time, Limone was actually quite isolated. Until the 20th century, it was only accessible by boat or mountain paths. The road along the lake came much later, so that's when tourism really started to grow. Behind the buildings, old lemon terraces climb up the hillside. They are what gave the town its name. For a long time, Limone was known for growing citrus fruit and supplying the surrounding area. Even though only around 1,000 people live here, during summer the town can receive 10,000 visitors a day. The reason it became so popular is pretty simple. The town looks like a postcard paradise. The old town is full of narrow alleys, small harbors, terraces, and colorful buildings. Even the food adds to that cinematic feeling. You'll see limone everywhere. Lemon pasta, desserts, drinks. It's like the whole town's identity is built around its name. The views here are what make it famous. The colors are warm, the mountains rise straight out of the lake, and the light on the water can look almost unreal. For people visiting Lake Garda without a car, Limone actually works well. At the same time, it doesn't always feel completely real. And that's something you'll have to decide for yourself. What matters more to you? Experiencing that picture-perfect version of Italy, or looking for places that feel more everyday life and lived in? Riva del Garda sits at the very top of Lake Garda, where the mountains close it from 3 sides, and the water almost feels trapped between them. The lake often has this deep turquoise color, especially when the lights hits it, which makes the whole place feel even more striking when you first arrive. Around 17,000 people live here. It's looked like a proper Italian town, with people going to work, students heading to school, families and everyday life just happening around you. Compared to smaller places like Limone sul Garda, Riva feels more open. The streets are wider, the piazzas are larger, and there is simply more space and more activity. At the same time, the mountains are right there. Hiking trails start almost directly from the town, and within a short time you're above the lake, looking back over the town and the water from a completely different perspective. And even though Riva feels more like a real town, you can still step away from that energy. Just a few streets back, or along quieter parts of the waterfront, things slow down again. You can't find calm streets if you want them. The main square, Piazza 3 Novembre, still carries that historical character. Arcaded buildings, old facades, layers of history. There are also more accommodation options here, often more affordable than further south, and it works really well as a base for exploring the north part of the lake. We were really happy to find a small local food truck because we could try some fresh, fried seafood. There had been a market on the piazza earlier, and likely the track was still open when we arrived. And of course, we couldn't leave the town without getting a classic Italian gelato. We liked Riva because it feels like more than a tourist destination. It feels like a real town where everyday life still comes first. Malcesine is on the eastern shore, directly opposite Limone sul Garda, and it makes a strong first impression. Compared to Limone, it seems a bit more open. The town spreads out more naturally along the shore. This is the town where Goethe got himself arrested. He was sitting outside making sketches of the castle when the locals became suspicious and reported him as a spy. The old town still carries a strong historical feeling. Walking through the narrow streets, with stone walls, small squares, and balconies full of flowers, it feels closer to something original. The restaurants are a big part of the experience here. The town is clearly made for visitors, but it never feels too overwhelming. The Scaligero Castle, built by the ruling Scaligeri family in the 40th centuries, sits right on the water's edge, its towers reflected in the lake. It's not just a landmark, it actually shapes how the town feels. Wherever you go, you see it above you, and it gives the whole place a strong historical presence. From up there, the view opens out over the lake, wide, clear, and almost endless, with the water stretching into the distance and the mountains rising on the other side. Malcesine has been attracting visitors for a long time. The mix of people who came here also feels different. You'll see older travelers and couples, but also younger people, especially those coming for hiking, cycling, or water sports. You also notice that plenty of Italians come here themselves, not just international visitors. It feels like a place people return to, not just pass through. Because of that, the atmosphere feels more balanced. It doesn't seem focused on just one type of visitor. This small town has a lot to offer, from the lake and the old streets to the mountains above. So different people come here for different reasons. We took a break in the old town and grabbed some classic Italian pizza before continuing our walk. Compared to Limone, eating here feels more flexible. You can just grab something on the go, like street food, and keep walking through the town. What makes the town stand out is this balance. It's definitely a tourist town, but it still has layers. You can enjoy the views, the restaurants, and the main streets, or step a little further away and find a quiet place by the lake where you can just sit and listen to the sound of the water. And one more thing, the roads between the towns. Being in a town like Riva or Limone sul Garda is one thing, but getting from one town to another, especially by car, is a completely different experience. You'll come across plenty of cyclists, but there aren't any dedicated cycle path connecting the towns. That means car and bicycles often have to share the same narrow roads, which can make driving a bit challenging. Sirmione sits on one of the most unusual geographical features on Lake Garda. It's a narrow peninsula, about 4 kilometers long, stretching out into the water and almost completely surrounded by it. Living here around 8,000 people, but during the season the number of visitors increases dramatically. The old town sits right at the tip of the peninsula. To enter it, you pass through the Scaligeri Castle, which controls the only entrance. After that, most of cars disappear, and suddenly you find yourself in the middle of a tourist hotspot. The mountains disappear, the landscape opens up, and everything feels softer. The streets are historic, the buildings are old, and there is a feeling of more light. The air feels different, coming off the water, and there is a lot more sun. Tourism here is also everywhere, especially in a place like Sirmione with so much history. And of course, you can't really escape it. The castle itself is one of the best preserved medieval fortresses in northeast Italy. Built in the 13th century by the Scaliger family, it still has its towers, walls, drawbridge, and moat almost completely intact. What we also liked about Sirmione is that not just the peninsula and the busy old town. If you move a bit away from the main area, you find a completely different side. Smaller streets, quieter neighborhoods, and places that feel much more local. The color of the water is different from the other parts of the lake, and you'll find cozy, welcoming restaurants that serve Italian food and are still popular with locals. From here, you can also take a ferry across the lake, which makes it easy to explore other towns without needing a car. Tickets usually cost around 5 till 10 euros, depending on your destination. Desenzano del Garda is the largest town on Lake Garda. Around 30,000 people live here, which already changes the atmosphere. It's a bigger, more spread out, and much more of a functioning place. Desenzano is quite well known, not so much for one single landmark, but for its location and accessibility. It's one of the main gateways to the lake, with a train station and direct access to the highway. So a lot of people pass through here, even if they don't always stay. Once we settled in and had our first aperitivo, just sitting there with a drink and some small snacks, we really started to like this place. At first we were actually a bit unsure about it. It doesn't have that immediate Instagram look like Limone sul Garda. It's less dramatic, less polished, maybe even a bit ordinary at first glance. But the longer we stayed, the more it changed. The architecture in Desenzano is a mix of old Italian character and more modern buildings. Walking through the town, you'll find historic houses with faded facades, balconies, and details that show their age, mixed with newer homes and apartments. Some buildings seemed more empty, even though the season had only just started, which gave parts of town a quiet and slightly forgotten feeling. Accommodation here is also more flexible. You'll find a wider range of options, often at better prices than in the more scenic towns. It works well if you want something practical, comfortable, and less crowded. We started trying small things, like a local restaurant, a bakery, a simple cornetto with an espresso in the morning, and slowly the place opened up. It felt more real, more like everyday life, and less designed for visitors. The castle sits on higher ground above the center and offers a broad view over the rooftops, the harbor, and the lake extending northwards. The 16th century structure is compact, but the viewpoint alone is worth the walk. We didn't come to Desenzano for one particular site. What surprises us was the calm atmosphere and the sense of authenticity that didn't announce itself loudly. Away from the tourist infrastructure that defines so much of the lake, this is a place with its own rhythm and charm. In our opinion, this place deserved much more attention than it usually gets. You have now seen the most famous towns around Lake Garda, so you can decide where you would like to stay. But everything really depends on what you are looking for. If you only have 2 days and don't want to rush, it probably makes more sense to stay somewhere like Malcesine or Limone sul Garda, where everything is close and impressive right away. But if you are traveling by car and planning to explore the lake more freely, then Desenzano del Garda or Riva del Garda can actually be a better choice. So in the end, it's not really about which place is better. It's about what kind of experience you want. Because Lake Garda has something for everyone. And that is the beauty of traveling. Wherever you go, there is always something new to discover.